Thanks, folks, for tuning back in. Sorry, it's been a while since we did a podcast. A lot of crap's been going on, which we'll get to in the meeting or in time. But today's guest is Waseem Khan. Thanks for coming by.
Sure, great to be here.
So, Waseem is one of the, I guess you can say, Muslim Meathead co-founders, I guess?
I wasn't, I was, I guess, indoctrinated earlier on.
Yeah.
But now the thing's grown to, I don't know how many folks, but I would say probably Shamel Malik, maybe even Zain Qureshi.
Yeah.
I think those two guys kind of started the whole thing.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, it's pretty awesome space to kind of share,
Oh, it is. Definitely is.
Your physical exercises, content. And you got brothers from all around, probably the States now, because there's some guys in there from like Virginia.
Yeah, I saw that.
It's pretty sweet.
Yeah, no, it's, I was honored to be added to it. It's a lot of data and info and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's very helpful. It's a good community. So I met you, I guess, actually, you tell me, how did we meet?
You know what? That's funny, because I was actually thinking about that on the way here, and I was like, how did I actually meet Moose? And I think originally, as far back as I could go, was like the Silk Road restaurant, and you were there,
yes,
kind of bussing there.
Yeah,
and
Silk Road, 20 years now.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And that place was a gem, because we didn't have all of this. Like, we didn't have like the hills and all these other spots. And I had a cousin who literally would go there all the time. And anytime she'd go, I'd kind of like tag along.
Yeah.
And I think I met you through there, and then we had some mutual friends. And then,
and then now here we are.
I wind up, at Hills probably like every other week.
Yeah.
So yeah, that must be
it's crazy. Full disclosure, I have allergies, so I might be coughing.
Okay, no worries.
And shameless plug, Magic Mind, please sponsor us. This is, I see UFC fighters take this all the time. This has a lot of things in it. It says shake, breathe, and drink, 55 milligrams of caffeine, matcha, adaptogens, nootropics, immunity. I'm giving this to you.
Nice.
Hopefully you shouldn't do anything too crazy. I mean, if you drink green tea or not even that?
I don't really drink teas. I mean, I think I was having this conversation, like I stopped caffeine, just kind of, just take salt tabs usually. I take these, folks probably know, like Noon tabs. Just kind of, getting the sodium back in the body.
That's
kind
important.
Of thing. But yeah, I don't know. It's just, for a long time when I was working out, I was taking like C4 and all these
good old days,
pre-workouts,
jacked.
Yeah, and I don't know. I just I had a health complication happen, and it was kind of advised to me to stop taking caffeine. So kind of not a lot of products out there where you have pre-workouts. I mean, there are some, but kind of never explored it. I was just like, hey, I'm just going to try to just work out. Without taking anything. Nowadays it's mostly like I'll eat some watermelon sometimes.
That's good.
Or, like the Noon tabs, and I feel great. So, thank God that it's going through.
I mean, we're a consumer nation, consumer population, consumer generation even. And we want to buy the next thing that'll help us improve and work faster. I mean, coffee. I'm drinking coffee right now because it's early and I didn't go to the gym. Usually if I go to the gym, I'll have a little pre-workout and then I'll be fine the rest of the day. Take a nap between lunch and dinner. But other than that, I mean, that though, it clears the brain fog. After COVID, also I wasn't 100%. You know? I would forget things and I would just space out. But I mean, I tried Alpha Brain and that was amazing. And it was just crazy expensive. But this is just another level. Natural stuff.
Yeah, try it out.
Yeah, I mean, whenever you can.
It's it's interesting. You mentioned COVID, and that's kind of where, my issues just rolled up out of nowhere. I was kind of just a normal human being taking pre-workouts, and I don't even know if it was COVID. So I don't know if you have the time for this boring story, but I kind of got hit with some sort of ailment for a couple of days. It was like 5-6 days.
Is it during COVID?
It was right before COVID, so a month before COVID.
Interesting.
So, and it was around wintertime, because I think COVID took off like that March.
Yes.
And this happened to me probably late January to February, and I kind of had like 103, 104 fever for like 4 or 5 days, and was completely fine after that. It was completely normal. Felt like I was going to die during that time, but after it just kind of went away. I went during that time to get a flu test or whatever. Like, oh, it's not flu. And I was like, oh, this is really bad for not being a flu, And then, like literally a month after that, I kind of just started experiencing this sensation of being dizzy, just getting like vertigo. This is a very odd situation, but long story short, I think it may have been COVID.
I mean, people were still getting it. It just wasn't reported as much in February. I think my brother-in-law actually had it in February. When did they shut down everything? When did they shut down New York?
I thought it had to be like April. I would say April that
April,
year.
right?
Yeah.
But he got sick in February. No, he got sick in February.
Yeah.
Because I think they slowly closed everything in February, end of February, because he was on the last train home before they stopped transportation completely.
Oh, man.
And he was in his room for 5 days. He didn't leave. And he said he had the flu, but then later on he's like, no, guys, I had COVID.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, though. Like, some of the things I hear from people, like, oh, I had this weird symptom, and, I lost, my sense of taste. I was like,
yeah.
It just affected so many different people in so many different ways. But yeah, now it's like, oh, it's not a thing,
Just take a pill, you'll be
whatever.
fine.
Like, oh, I got COVID last week, and now it's crazy how quickly the world has kind of changed too.
Yeah, it's sad because so many fat cats benefited from tragedy like that.
Yeah, and I think it's also like, you look back at history, right? Like everybody at one point was had the first flu.
Yeah.
Right? So they're like, oh my God, we have the flu. Like no one go out, and it's craziness. And now it's like, I got the flu.
Yeah.
So times change.
I was reading up on it, in the, I think it was 1920s.
Right.
They would beat people and put them in jail if they were out during quarantine. It was heavy duty stuff.
Yeah, it's wild how quickly, that's what we're good at, right? We're humans, we adapt, we evolve, kind of learn to move on.
Yeah, it's crazy.
With the struggles you have.
It's crazy, especially with these drug companies racing to create a cure.
Yeah.
And then, for example, Pfizer getting fined $1.4 billion. I don't even know for what, but fined by the government.
Right.
But I don't know. We don't know what's going on behind closed doors. We can only speculate,
right?
Just like another segue into aliens.
Okay, great. I knew this was going to come up. I know we had this conversation briefly while having dinner.
Yeah, after, we had that brief conversation, because your phone is always listening to you, TikTok just started showing me alien stuff.
A lot of people were saying this to me too. Like Instagram will pop up feeds and what they were talking about.
I mean, my theory with that is that because Amazon owns 60 or 70% of the internet via their servers,
right?
They are always listening because your phone is always listening. Advertisers are always listening, and when they hear that, they just feed the server somehow.
Alexa's always listening.
Yeah, fun fact. If you listen to music and then you open the Amazon app, you'll hear the decibels drop noticeably.
All right, I gotta test that out.
Yeah, because they don't let you use your app unless I think you say yes to all the user agreements, which in there says probably we're listening always.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting the topic of aliens. There's actually, I was watching something. It's like a Netflix series, a new one out right now. It's called Encounters. Encounters. Yeah. Ooh. It's actually quite good. Because I think it was the first episode kind of talked about a town of people just constantly having these kind of experiences of seeing things in the sky in their town. I forget the town. It's probably some remote town. But, someone had come forward and kind of, told the police station, like, hey, we're seeing these lights. And then they opened up a forum for who else has been seeing this.
Yeah.
And like the next day, literally like 300, 500 people from the town showed up there. They had to like close the doors because that's how many people said they were seeing these things.
Yeah.
So it's kind of insane.
But what do they see?
They said they were seeing lights in the sky, and like very odd kind of maneuvering objects, like things we wouldn't think were possible, as what we know as engineering of aircrafts that we have.
Yeah.
So it's always interesting to me. Like I always tend to be speculative about one person saying something, but if you have a town of people saying they said, like, are they all in on this lie?
Yeah. Like who's giving them $1 each to say that?
And it's not, to me too, it's also like, we always like jump to the, it's aliens. Maybe it's not, right? Maybe it's just the government has, technology that, we don't know about, they're not sharing.
They are. I mean, what was it? 2 months ago, some dude went in front of Congress under oath to talk about aliens, technology. And I don't know how that didn't make news around the world. But he was talking about, I think, the flying Tic Tac that all the pilots were seeing and reporting, the unidentified objects.
Right.
And they said most of the time they were just being dismissed, but they were logged in as something they saw because the rules are you have to log whatever you see. And a lot more of these pilots said they would see a flying Tic Tac defying gravity and stuff like that. Only for this dude, I think he was saying that, those are ours. We have an alien aircraft. We reverse engineered. What do they say? I don't know when, 20s or 40s. And I don't know. I mean, someone was like, we had an alien that we talked to and everything like that. And Area 21 or 51, whatever.
51, right.
Area 51 is where they test out all the aircrafts that they built.
Right.
So it's like, all right, I guess everything from the movies and TV shows is true, but no one cares.
Yeah, it's and that's what's kind of interesting too, because I think there was a blast in the New York Times about that coming out, and like you would think that we'd be more receptive to this than Barbie,
Yeah.
But,
oh my God. Yes.
It's kind of, even if it's not right, like I said again, people just tend to think like, oh, like you're quack for believing that there's like aliens. Not even like the fact of aliens, the technology, right? And that kind of brings me to another guy too. This guy named Bob Lazar. I don't know if you've heard of this guy. He was on the Rogan podcast.
His show Ancient Apocalypse on Netflix. No, that's
another guy.
That's another guy. That's a good show too. But they did reference Bob Lazar a lot. Yeah.
So that guy Bob has a very interesting story. He, I think he was some sort of engineer. I don't know what specification, but I guess he worked on airplanes, or he was designing some sort of airplane too. And he kind of got a gig to work at a top secret facility.
Area 51.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what it was actually.
Yeah.
So I think he got a gig to work there. It was top secret, whatnot. And he talked about how the access levels to even getting there were absolutely insane. Like you would take a bus, it would drop you off, you get picked up by another bus.
Yeah.
And no one person kind of knew what the other person was working on.
Interesting.
Because that's the way, like, when you get to those higher levels of the government, like, it makes sense. You just want to know a specific detail of your task.
Sounds like a Marvel movie where they can't tell anyone about. Just
Right.
say your lines to this dummy.
Like, we don't know the end goal, but we know that my purpose in this goal is this one thing, and that's all I'm supposed to know.
Interesting.
So that was his deal, but his actual deal was reverse engineering an aircraft.
Really?
And that aircraft was this extraterrestrial, apparently, aircraft. And he said that, his whole thing was too is, I don't really care if there are aliens, but is there anything that could have made this on this earth with the components that are in it? Absolutely not. And when they're reverse engineering it, they couldn't even figure out how this thing worked.
Yeah.
It's taking years. They've had this thing since like the 1920s or 30s, and they couldn't even figure out how it works out. So he found it more interesting as I'm more interested in the tech, right? Like this tech is so far advanced.
Yeah.
And that was his thing, is like, how does this work? Because if we could figure out how this works, the benefits we could have as a society to have propulsion without gas or any of these things. And, you know, it's like never ending energy in a sense.
Well, think about it. We've had that before, thousands of years ago in ancient Egypt. I would like to think that, because to this day, the best minds in the world doesn't know how we built those pyramids.
That's true.
Right? Like, they just put on pictures, oh, they're just pushing it up a hill.
Right.
It's like, really? Like 10 tons of bricks being pushed up a hill on logs?
I heard, you know, it's kind of funny you said that. I heard a recent story, and I don't know, so don't quote me on this, but the new thought is that they were moving clay up there.
Okay.
And then making the stone in place.
Interesting.
So making the actual stone as you go. That would make sense.
That would make sense, but that's a buttload of clay.
I mean.
And it's heavier because it's like wet.
Yeah, my Egyptian brothers are strong people. So
yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, those guys probably could do it. But,
I mean, that would also have to, like, I mean, we don't really know the exact number of slaves, but that means that they probably had
mass
thousands, hundreds of thousands of slaves.
It is interesting though, because even in other parts of the world, you see, like, I don't know, it's like Peru, where there's actual engravings in stones, and they've talked about how that's not really possible to get that precise without having some sort of laser technology.
Yes.
Like, all right, who had a laser back then, right? You know, so.
And they're still finding like these rooms and caverns in the pyramids all over the world still.
Yeah, it's interesting how, you know, folks like to dismiss, right? Like people who talk on the topics of these kind of like, well, how did this, you know, work? But I always feel like, well, why aren't we thinking about this, right? Like, we should know where we came from, right?
Yeah.
Or we should know, you know, where we came from, so we know where we're going.
Yeah.
And if there are, you know, any sorts of intelligent life, I always tend to think, you know, I don't know, what would be their purpose, right? Like, why would they be coming here? Why would they be concerned? Like, because to them, and I'm not saying I'm either or, but I look at it kind of, someone made the analogy, it's like you walking on a sidewalk and you see an ant like colony on the floor. Why would I stop?
Yeah.
Unless there's some purpose in, hey, maybe they're doing something wrong and they're going to destroy the environment.
I mean, also you'll have that 1 out of 10 who'll be like, I'm curious to see what they're going to do next. And those people have the most time. I mean, children.
Right.
Children will stop about 99% of the time just to see how cool it is, because they've never seen it before.
Right.
So maybe aliens have an innocence like that, where they're so advanced, they're just bored. So they want to just travel the galaxies and find such primitive population like us back in the Stone Age. And they're like, we're going to spark something so you can see fire. And they're like, look at how crazy those guys are getting. Or be like, we're going to show you how to make a wheel. Let's cut some stones of wheels and see what they're going to do.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, it's I mean, that your mind kind of travels, right, when you start thinking about this. But I think it's good to kind of look into those things. Like, we should explore that.
We should.
We shouldn't kind of bash folks who kind of want to entertain that idea either, because I think it's, you know.
I mean, like, for example, those 2 alien bodies from Mexico that were mummified.
Yeah.
And they just show them to the world, and they're like, guys, these are aliens. And then NASA's like, well, send us a sample. Right. But I think, I mean, you can't trust everything in
of course
any
not.
third world country. Yeah. But Mexico says that they did like DNA testing and everything, and there's like several strands that are not of this world. Like, we're closely related to like monkeys DNA wise. Right. But this one is like totally different.
Yeah, it's definitely a topic that
but Mexico shouldn't just be the ones to research it.
Right. And I think there should be, like, you know, legitimate folks around the world. But, you know, the thing that comes too is that I feel like this is, like, from what, you know, I kind of read about, it's not just like it's happening in the US. Yeah. Right. Like, you have reports of like these things happening in Pakistan and like India and like, you know, hotspots around the world. Yeah. And kind of oddly enough, when natural disasters are happening, like when certain events are happening, you know, I think there was one I was reading about where there was an earthquake about to happen in Japan. And right before that, there were numerous sightings of, you know,
Animals, right? Wasn't it animals just like running away or something?
Well, not even that. It was, there was reports of unidentified flying objects in the area where the earthquake was taken off. And then like 2 days later, there was an earthquake.
Wow.
So
Japan. You know, they have a place called the Dragon's Triangle where they find like up to 200 new species of fish a year.
oh, wow, that's insane.
And they think that's like a white hole in the water, whereas like Bermuda Triangle is the black hole.
Right. So stuff just pops out of it.
Yeah. I mean, I hope everyone Googles all of this. We're not professionals,
Yeah,
so
fact check me.
we're just chatting, you know.
Yeah.
But to talk about the mind, how hard is it to be, I mean, people are going to make fun of me for asking this, but how hard is it to be a working man, family man in 2023?
It's tough, man. You know, I myself have 2 kids, a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old, and they will keep us quite busy. I usually say my second job starts at, 6 o'clock, right?
Yeah.
You know, I'm a 9 to 5 guy too, but it's definitely challenging because I'd say, you have to be able to devote that time too, because every guy gets home and they're tired.
Yeah.
Right? You're tired from a long day, but you gotta really try and focus to make that time for the kids. At least an hour, 2 hours. My wife actually, she's great, man. Not just saying that.
Not because there's cameras on us. Or
She's great. She actually implemented a rule where, at least in the summertime, as soon as she gets home, kind of get the kids some food, but we have park time, right? Like it's at least an hour every single day after school. And that's time to just be with the kids and let them kind of run free. Cause they need to be able to experience that time with us, right?
Yeah.
Like granted, I'm a first generation, Pakistani American, right? Like, so my parents really busted their, to kind of get us ahead, and they didn't have that time, and nor did they kind of, I guess, make that time sometimes.
Yeah.
Because they come from a background of, we just work and kind of got to get stuff done, and that's what it is. And I respect them for that. And they didn't have much, and they kind of built me up to what I am today. But we have that. We have that kind of gift or blessing of being able to give time to our kids. So it would just make us, I feel like, as a man, in this world, we have to be able to keep that conditioning in our minds that we need to give back to our kids too. And not just in the sense of here's your tuition money, right? Or here's your lunch money. We have to give them that emotional side too.
Yeah.
What are they going to actually remember?
I mean, you're 100% right. So like, we'll use my example. And this is just experience. Like growing up like you, first generation, right? It's tough. It's like, I can't do the things that my American friends are doing, but I kind of get it, but I don't, And then if you ask your parents, they really don't explain it to you. They just say, because I said so.
Right.
And then you're like, well, then I'm going to do it, right? And then next thing you know, you're just thinking, yeah, I shouldn't have done it. I should have listened to my parents. Right. But then you don't want to give them the satisfaction that they were right. Because then, in a way, you end up, as a young person, you want to be independent, but then you don't know how to do it. And it takes parents to say, listen, I'm going to explain to you. I'm going to take the time. But in the end, you have to listen to me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's a tough balancing act too, especially like, when we were kids, we didn't have access to all this internet and technology.
Right? Definitely not.
So like half the stuff that like I have to monitor on my kid's iPad, like what are they watching? There's a whole nother complexity there too, right?
I have to block half these things that pop up.
Yeah, it's crazy, but
Like Ninja Kids.
yeah.
I blocked that right away because Ninja Kids sounds cool until they're
I think
just...
my kid's watching that one right now.
Yeah, we'll block it because then they start talking about like boyfriend and girlfriend and everyone's
Oh, right.
swimming together.
So that's why she goes hiding in the corner. Okay.
Yeah, right? Yeah. That's why I'm just like, well, what are you watching? Someone was talking about like Barbie and how you have to take 20 Instagram pictures just to look cool. And I'm just like, yeah, we're deleting that channel right away. It's scary, dude.
It is scary. I think though, like the things that are out there now probably were there when we were around, but we just didn't have that access to like that information so quickly. Like these kids have everything at their fingertips. And now I have my 6-year-old asking me like, Daddy, when am I getting a cell phone?
No.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
I got my first cell phone my first year of college.
Oh, yeah?
I think it was like prepaid too. My dad was like, here's the cell phone
Yeah.
and here's a credit card. And you only use it in times of emergency.
That was a tool then.
Yeah, it was like you didn't touch that thing unless,
Yeah. Now it's a multi-tool.
Yeah, now it's, kids are in, middle school and they all have phones.
So I was working yesterday and this family came in to celebrate this 13-year-old's birthday. And I've known those kids since they were tiny. And they were so fun. I mean, they still are fun. They would bring in their notebooks, color and stuff like that. But you see such a huge transition with these children when you give them a screen and a phone. Because these kids could not put their phone down for 1 second.
Yeah,
They were taking 20 selfies everywhere. And it's like, wow. So you're sharing that with who and for what purpose?
Right.
Yeah,
I noticed it too. And I'm probably to blame as well.
I mean, we've all been there.
It's like sometimes you want to go out to dinner with your whole family and you got a 2-year-old and the only way to shut them up is by giving them the iPad.
Yeah.
And it's like, back before I, even had kids, I always thought like I'm never gonna get my kid a phone.
I was in the same boat.
They're never gonna do, and I was like, no, like it's gonna happen. But regardless, though, I look back at it too. And I was talking to someone about this. I'm like, we were raised on MTV.
That's right. I remember waking up, eating my breakfast, watching TV, and then going to school.
It was like the worst possible TV too sometimes. And it's like, oh, well, it turned out okay.
Yeah. I mean, we're not like living like the real world.
Yeah. And our family, we still have values too. We kind of make sure that we're instilling those values. I feel like it's a learning process too, right? For you as a parent. Mm-hmm. When I had my first kid, I was scared to death. I was sitting in the hospital room and I'm like, oh my God, like, what do I do?
Yeah.
Right? Like you don't know what you just do. I feel like people say that, like, they're like, oh, it's just innate and you'll just learn. Yeah, you do learn to adapt.
Yeah, you do. You listen to everything the nurse tells you.
Yeah, but then, when you got a crying child on your shoulder and that kid has 104 temperature at night.
Yeah.
What do you do? Do I go to the hospital or, like, how do I resolve this? And you're still kind of young. I mean, we were young. I remember there was a specific time too. My kid had 104 temperature and she was only like 3 or 4 months.
Yeah.
And we're like freaking out. And, thank God our pediatrician, who's a saint.
Yeah.
The guy picks up his phone at like 2 a.m. And he's like, oh, don't worry.
Yeah.
We just got to bring that temperature down, and
give Tylenol.
Yeah. And it's just that act too of like the comforting of, he was more nurturing as a human to human. I'm a parent too. You're going to be fine. Like you don't understand that at that point in your life. You're like, okay, like there's thousands, millions of people that have done this before me and we'll figure it out.
It's just, I mean, like, parents, another good crutch to fall on just in case anything happens. They've been, right? I asked the car guy, I said, listen, so you're telling me that they made X amount of cars.
Right.
And they're just squeezing a little, like, week by week. And the point is to drive demand. Mm-hmm. And their excuse is not a chip shortage anymore. It's not COVID, but corporate greed. The guy's like, it's 100% corporate greed.
Yeah, I mean, it's the nature of business too, or at least here in a sense, the exploitation of people.
Yeah.
But it is what it is, and we're still gonna probably buy the car.
Yeah, at least the car.
Yeah.
But I mean, I got a new Wrangler
Oh, nice.
hybrid. Surprising is the most sold hybrid in 2023. So I'm like, okay. I mean, it's still a Jeep, but to be honest,
yeah. Those cars go forever, man.
yeah, they go forever. And thing is that like I wanted a safe car again.
Yeah.
Not saying that my Audi was safe or not safe, but when you get behind a luxury car
Yeah,
and the engine is like German made,
Yeah,
and you
it's
just
a different
gun
feel.
it, yeah.
I used to have I forget the name, but it was a Jeep as well.
Cherokee?
It's like an older. No, it wasn't a Cherokee. I forget now. But the thing is a tank. I actually gave it to my dad. Actually, my brother gave me that car.
Yeah.
It was a hand-me-down from him.
Uh-huh.
Then I gave it to my father. The thing was still working just fine. And I think it had almost like 200 plus,
Yeah.
miles on it, 200,000 plus miles on it. But it was a tank. That thing went through everything.
They last forever. And my other Jeep did last at least like 8 years. I modded it and everything.
They're fun.
Yeah, they're a lot of fun.
Yeah, you drive
Especially in
that
the
thing through
snow.
everything. Yeah.
Only problem was when we had that flood and I saved some people's lives. Maybe we'll reference the last podcast.
What's that about?
So the last podcast, I had a friend. He was a customer turned friend. His name is John Mopper. He's a child psychotherapist.
Okay.
And I'll send you the link. He explains the story in full detail. But long story short, he that night we closed early. My employee stayed overnight, and he had ordered takeout. But then 3 hours later, his wife canceled because she said he's stuck in the middle of Flemington and his car is gone.
Okay.
And I'm just thinking to myself, like, this guy's such a nice guy, very positive, and I don't want anything to happen to him. I have a Jeep Wrangler lifted with a snorkel. If I don't take it out to help him, I just look like the biggest poser ever.
Yeah. It's of use at that point. Right.
So I went, I got his coordinates. I picked him up. Drive from here to Flemington usually takes like 30 minutes. Took me an hour and 45. Back roads and everything, rivers I had to go through.
Yeah.
I made a YouTube video. It was insane. I saw a log hit electrical pole and got stuck in a live wire and was just sparking on fire.
Oh my God.
That was crazy. But I picked him up and I drove him back. He lives down the street from here. And
Okay.
I dropped him back there. And before he got out of the car, I gave him his takeout. I said, "Here's your food, John." It's kind of like Castaway with Tom Hanks.
Yeah.
He got that one package he didn't open, and he made it his purpose to survive and live to deliver that package.
Yeah.
That was a great movie.
I saw that a long time ago. Was it Wilson?
Yeah.
The ball?
Oh, that was the most saddest.
It was a long movie
scene.
too, right?
Yeah, it was very long. It was like 2.5 hours.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. Yeah, you know what? Speaking of movies, movies kind of suck these days.
They definitely suck now.
Like,
I mean, what was the last good movie that you can even remember?
I mean, like, honestly, there was a one Netflix movie with the Captain America guy, or not the Captain. What was it?
Steve Rogers.
It was Extraction. Was that
Yeah, that was a spy movie.
Yeah, that was pretty decent.
That was fun.
They made 2 of them, but like, yeah, other than that, there's no movies where they like stand out. Like, we used to have these movies like Good Will Hunting. I had like huge like.
I rewatched that again just because the
That's
raw
my favorite
emotion.
movie, yeah.
Dude, that raw emotion.
Oh, it's great.
When he tells him it's not his fault.
Yeah.
And I also miss Robin Williams. He was a big part of my childhood.
It's that sort of like storytelling,
Yeah.
right? Where you can feel that character, what they're going through, how they've changed. There's no real movies out there that.
It's not about the script or the writing anymore. It's about the budget and the CGI and how much can you make something look real.
And that just makes it even more fake to me.
I mean, like, look at an example, that Keanu Reeves movie, John Wick.
John Wick.
First
right.
one is still the best.
Yeah.
Right? But after they quadrupled his budget and made it it's like, how much can a guy take a beating in bullets?
Yeah. It just keeps going too, and it just get tired of it. Even like, honestly, I'm not a fan of Marvel. Like, I'm not that type of like, as I feel like they just keep abusing that sort of like
genre.
just keep
Yeah.
on like creating more and more, and it just like takes so much away from it.
That's true.
When you had like the Dark Knight, like it was like that was one thing, and it was done.
You're like, if I had $1 billion, I can do that too. You know,
right.
But
That had some great storytelling too, right? Like,
great twists. Too.
Yeah. And just like dark, even actually that newer one, it was halfway decent. The Robert Pattinson one.
Yeah, it was too long,
Yeah.
but it was good.
It was dark, like literally. Like the movie was dark.
Yeah.
Like you couldn't make out stuff in it too sometimes.
Yeah, and I remember the director was like, "Yeah, we did it on purpose so that you can like stay into the story and focus." It's like, dude, I want to watch a movie for entertainment. You know?
They tried to take more of that like actual crime kind of comic book feel, I think, but.
And I like how they almost filmed every Batman movie in Newark, like parts of it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Funny story, actually. I recently moved, but I used to live in Jersey City about, well, it's been maybe 2-3 years now. And at that time, I think maybe a year prior to that, they filmed Joker there.
Oh yeah.
Like literally.
Oh, the
down
staircase
the block.
is there too, right? Like where he's
The
dancing.
staircase, I think, is in New York.
Okay.
I'm not sure if it's Brooklyn, but the scene where he's actually going into his workplace.
Yeah.
That's the old Lowe's Theater in Jersey City.
Ah.
It's right by the Journal Square area. And that's like a landmark. It's been there since like the early 1900s or whatever. Yeah. But it was crazy because they filmed some of those shoots like there was like Gotham police cars like on my
GCPD.
block. Yeah, it was pretty cool to see that. But that was actually a great film too.
You know, Joker was one of the first films that didn't make mental illness like a taboo thing.
Right.
But it opened people's eyes to like if society doesn't pay attention, or even if your neighbors or friends don't pay attention, or family, this is what may happen.
Yeah.
You know?
It's definitely something that I think, you know, at least in this society, I don't even think it's a cultural thing too, because like, to be honest, yeah, in my culture, I feel like you're not supposed to really show that sort of emotion, even as a man, right? Like you're not supposed to kind of show that sort of, you know, you're having an issue, you're having some sort of problem. And I feel like that's the reason why a lot of times, like, people fall into drugs, they fall into these sort of bad habits or, you know, bad things in their life. I think it's a global issue too, right?
It is. People just, they need someone to talk to when it comes to these things to help figure things out, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, I will say in our culture, as well as just in general, especially in America, is like, we are quick to point out problems.
Yeah.
We have insecurities and we react instead of taking 10 seconds to like just think and see, why did that person say that, or why am I thinking like this? Let's find a solution so we can move on from this and be positive together. Right? That almost never happens.
Yeah.
People don't collect themselves after they react too. They just get worse and worse.
Yeah, and it's tough too because when you have this upbringing, right, as a child, to dumb that down, to not voice that, like, you know, men are not supposed to cry, you know, men are not supposed to, you know, talk about their problems, right? You kind of create this, you know, global phenomenon of just having, you know, mental disorders and issues like that. Yeah, I can guarantee there's tons of people I know right now that are going through some wild stuff. That are completely silent about it. But it's definitely important to, you know, speak up. And it's not even the fact of like, look, we're two dudes sitting here talking. Just talking is great, right? Like I think that's probably one of the number one things that someone just needs to do is just to, hey man, like, how's it going? Right?
Like generally ask the question and generally answer that question.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I listen to all these podcasts and everything like that. And there's a couple of things. Like, I saw a little thing with Anthony Mackie where he was talking about if he comes home from work, he does expect, you know, his wife or girl to maybe make a sandwich or see if he's hungry.
Right.
And the host was like, no, why should she do anything for you? And then he's like, well, if someone, I guess, tries to steal your purse, or if you're going in the car and you want someone to open the door for you, or if someone just says something nasty about you, who do you expect to defend your honor? Yeah,
right.
Your man. So if your man comes home from a long day of work and he expects something small, why not?
Right. Yeah, and I absolutely agree. I feel like, look, in my mind, there's roles, right? And at least from what I believe in, I think it's in the same perspective, right? Like, my wife takes care of me in a certain way.
Yeah.
And I make sure I take care of her and my family in a certain way.
Exactly.
And I think that's something to be valued. That's something to be cherished. That's love, right?
Yeah.
That I'm the protector of my family.
Yep.
Right? That's what I give back to them. I make sure there's a roof over our heads. So if it's so hard for me to ask for a sandwich coming home from work, then there's obviously a problem there.
So we look at it as like, all right, there's a problem, right, in that specific situation. Then there's lack of communication.
Right.
I've been married now like almost 17 years. And there's ups and downs, like any marriage, especially when kids are involved, in-laws, parents,
right,
even siblings from both sides. I've learned the hard way that it's better to just keep everyone out, so that way there's no prejudice or finger pointing when it comes to discussing a problem at hand or trying to understand. A lot of people don't understand whenever there's an argument. What needs to happen is one person and the other person is supposed to communicate how they feel, their frustrations, and then say, okay, help me understand.
Right.
Which most of the time no one doesn't, because they're angry or they're calling names
Right.
and stuff. And it's a chemical reaction in the brain, honestly, from complaining to pointing fingers to trying to be right. And what does that do? Like, if you're a third person watching you and your significant other argue, that third person's like, I'm wasting my time. Like,
Right.
what's going on here? I don't know. I've become more solutions driven since, like, we're running this business and the new business and stuff. It's just, I don't want to waste time. I want to make sure everyone's happy, everyone gets paid. Customers are very happy and they come back.
Right.
But unfortunately, people just have egos or insecurities, and you don't want to fault them at that, but you more want to ease them into learning the habits, even micro habits, of
Right.
being better, even if they don't know it.
Right.
But you don't want to just say, I'm doing it for you. You want to just be like, I want to show you.
Right.
It's tough, especially with your spouse.
Yeah, it's tough, but it's definitely a growing kind of period that I think really like never ends. Right?
It'll never end until one person dies or the other, till sickness and in health, right?
I hope we get at some point in time where we kind of, but there becomes a mutual understanding to, in the respects of learning how to control tempers, right? Like you said, when you have two people screaming at each other, or two people disagreeing on it, it's probably best to just let it cool off, right?
Yeah.
Just let it go.
Go to the gym and come back.
Go to the gym. Yeah.
But
yeah, I mean, maybe don't go to the gym at that second.
Oh yeah,
but,
not at like 2 a.m, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is, what I learned is, and I learned because I've seen my parents have nasty fights growing up, and they're not from the same culture. My mom's Filipino, my dad's Afghan. Right, she converted at the wedding, and it was a learning process for her.
Right.
Even to this day, right? But the thing is, what I've learned is that, like, even if you don't think you're wrong, or if you know you're wrong, you should be the first one to be like, listen, don't apologize for like what you think you're doing right or wrong.
Right.
Apologize for either creating or giving into a situation where things got out of hand.
Right.
Like, if you strongly believe that you're right, just say, I'm sorry that I came off that way.
Yeah.
I still think I'm right, but please help me understand. And I learned that the hard way. I mean, watching your parents fight your whole life kind of like messes your head.
Yeah.
But then also you're just like, I'm never gonna do that to my kids growing up.
Yeah, it's definitely, here and there, obviously, you watch your parents fight, and then sometimes you get caught in this mix of like, oh my God, like, I'm just like my dad. I need to
Dude,
stop.
that's the worst.
And you know, I've been in that place where I've kind of like looked at my wife and like, let's go to another room right now.
Yes.
Because, you know, we can hash it out, whatever, we'll figure it out,
Yeah.
right, at the end of the day. But what they take away from it is something else that we completely do not know how it's going to affect them later on, right? That's something that we really have grown, I guess, to notice, like, yeah, things we say, they're like sponges, and they'll kind
Super
of just,
spongy.
you know, they'll kind of just, you know, take all of that in.
Yeah, like look at, for example, today, like it's funny that you said that. This morning, my son, he still has pull-up diapers, he's in pre-K, right?
Yeah.
So my wife is like, can you change his diaper? He's a stupid rash we have to get rid of. I'm like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
So I put the stuff down, and I go in the other room, and then my son comes back and says, Daddy, change my diaper, I have a stupid rash. It's like, dude, no, don't say that word.
Yeah.
Just say you have a rash.
Yeah,
But he learned that from his mom, because if she can say it, he thinks it's okay.
Yeah.
You know, it's great. Like another example, I was leaving to go to work yesterday,
Yeah.
and I was a bit, not annoyed, but I was just tired, right? You know, when you're tired, you don't want to really deal with things.
Right.
But my kids, they always do this. They come up to me like at 4 when I'm leaving, 4:30, and they're just telling me, don't leave, stay. I have to stay,
Yeah.
right? And that breaks every parent's heart
Right.
all the time, whenever you're going to work. And you remember yourself doing that to your parents too.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I did this outside where the Ring camera is, and I just said, okay, guys, I have to go. I love you. I'm gonna try and work hard so that we can have more time together. But then when I look at the camera, I'm just like, man, I'm like annoyed. You know, I could just be more enthusiastic or more caring, but
Right.
like, you need to be aware of the present, because the present is all we have.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I was having a conversation with some coworkers about how you know, what would you rather do in life, right? Like I used to work in banking, and
Banking.
yeah, and it was quite challenging because I worked for Goldman Sachs at the time.
Oh
Just
my
put it
goodness.
out there. I'm done with them anyways. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter. And it was the first year actually of me being married. So I would get into the office probably around like 6:30 in the morning, 7 a.m.
In the city?
at like actually they were in Jersey City, in Exchange Place. But I was living in Rahway at the time. But yeah, I would get in at 6:37, and then I'd be leaving at like, you know, 11:30, 12 at night every day. It was the first year of marriage, right? My wife's like, what the hell? This guy's never around, right? It's like, you know, what choice do I have? We didn't have kids at the time. I had to grind. So I knew that wasn't really the place for me.
Yeah.
And, you know, kind of paid my dues, got in the trenches, worked hard, and then kind of left there. But I had this thought, just bring it back. Some people, my father always used to say this saying of, work hard now so you can enjoy your life later. And then someone at work was saying, well, you know, the one thing most people, when they ask them regret in their life, is working less
Yeah.
and having time with kids. And I kind of like weigh that too. Like, what makes more sense? Should I, like, you know, cut out those meetings and kind of make that time for kids, or do I actually work, you know, my ass off right now and hope they have a better life later? It's this constant struggle of like, what's right?
Yeah.
Right? And I don't know. I mean, something I haven't figured out.
Listen, I think you do know, and you've already been acting upon it without even actually knowing subconsciously, because you just told me earlier, you guys have an hour a day or whatever to go to the park with the kids.
That's a good point.
You know? So you guys are trying. I mean, that's perfect and amazing advice. Anyone who's listening who doesn't have kids or has kids but want to spend more time should do.
Right.
I would advise, like, people who are listening who don't have kids but want to set up so that they have that time. Like, children are innocent,
Right.
right? So you give them a ball. You give them like a nice new T-shirt, bright colored. They'll love you forever.
Right.
They will
That's
be
so
playing
true.
with it, you know?
That is so true.
So if you're saying to your kid, I used to take my daughter outside for a walk when she was able to walk. And I said, you know what? Let's go for a walk.
Right.
And just the stimulation from seeing the sky, the sun, the birds, the trees, she was having the best time of her life.
Yeah.
You know, and these kids, they like your kids, they just want to run around. They
Right.
just want to be kids.
Well, I think the other thing too is it's not even the act of like, okay, let's go to the park. They just want time with you.
Yes.
That's it. You know, if you just think about that concept too, it's quite crazy to think about this, is that, could you imagine just like the only thing you wanted is someone's time?
Yeah.
That's all they really want is your time. They just want your presence in the same room and being in there. Because sometimes I'll be like, okay, let's go to the basement. You know, we have like a whole toy setup thing. And,
Yeah.
you know, and sometimes I'll catch myself, I'm on the phone looking at emails and it's like, Daddy, come on, like,
Yeah.
let's play. And it's like, I forget that, like, it doesn't even matter if like I'm not, you know, playing with that actual toy. It's just being involved with them at that moment that they actually want. It could be anything. It could be brushing your teeth, right? Like, it doesn't matter. It's just want that presence of you. And it's funny enough, I brought her home. There was like a little knick-knack, like a little fish, sponge like fish, like kind of stress ball.
Yeah.
And I put it on her bed because I know she likes these like squishy toys. And she's like, oh my God, Daddy, like, where'd you get that from? I was like, oh, I got it at work. You know, it was just like, hey, them out. She's like, oh my God, thank you so much, Daddy. And it was like, really? Like, okay, like, no problem. And it's something that small, but that she felt probably that Daddy got me this,
Yep.
right?
Because you thought about her.
Right.
You know? Yeah.
But yeah, it's an interesting way they think.
Yeah. Well, inshallah, I just pray that our kids are protected. They become much better than us, and take care of us when we're old.
Inshallah.
But that's all the time we have right now. That was a good podcast. I hope.
Awesome.
Thank you for taking the time off and coming out too.
Yeah, no worries.
And we should do this more often.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you guys in the next one.